From the Highlands to the coast, we'll bring you the rivalries, the traditions, the legendary coaches, and tomorrow's superstars forging their path to greatness. You're watching CarolinaPreps.com.
Get off up, Lonnie. Get off up. Hold it, hold it.
All right, guys. Hey, Chris Hughes coming to you once again. It is Monday night, August the 4th, 2025. High school football season's really ramping up. We've been out and about and busy trying to see teams, talk to coaches, doing all we can do to promote the state of North Carolina, which is what I try to do. I got my main man. I'm going to bring him here to the stage, Andy Rodden, who does a lot of corresponding with me. Coach Rodden, appreciate you coming on to talk some football with us. And we're going to hear in just a few moments, going to talk to a coach that's literally in your backyard, in your neck of the woods at the school that you used to coach at.
Absolutely. And, Sun Valley High School is, very special to me because that's where I went to school as well. So, I went to school there, coached there, taught there, and the guy that we're going to bring on actually played for me. So it's great to see alumni like him come back and support the school and be in his spot.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask him some questions about what Coach Andy was really like, but I can't wait to do that. Hey, I appreciate you jumping on board with us here with the Carolina Preps team and just helping me out, going out interviewing coaches. I checked out your interview with Coach Seidel over at J.M. Robinson. You've been out and about at Mount Pleasant and Burns. You've been all over the place, probably more so than me this past week or so. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's just in your blood. I mean, and you know this, Chris. I mean, coaching is a fraternity, and once you get it in you, and it's hard to put it down. And I just love the purity of the high school football game, and I think it's the purest that it will ever be. So it's a joy for me to even join you and just to be a part of this Carolina Preps team is very. I'm very grateful to you for allowing me to do that.
Well, no, I appreciate you. So thank you for that. I'm going to look like I'm multitasking here only because I'm trying. I got a new commercial that I'm supposed to be playing today, and I'm going to do my best real quick to try to find it while we're talking, and that's really not a good thing. But yeah, we've got some new sponsors that I'm really happy and proud to announce here this week with hold on. I got like way too much going on my hey, I do have it. I'll work on that during the break. But anyway, yeah, I'm excited to have some new partners because here in a day or two, I'm not ready to announce this yet. But Carolina Preps and the National Guard are about to really ramp up a program that is going to recognize excellence from high school football players in every region, every sweeping corner of North Carolina this year. I mean, like we're talking like here in 3 weeks, and I'm excited to kind of tease that here soon. So we'll talk about later on. But hey, without any further ado, I've got this young man here waiting in the background. Let's bring on Coach Ryan Smith, the head football coach at Sun Valley High School. He's been there for 3 years, done a incredible job. I think I'm looking at it. This is going to be his 4th season, and that team just seems to get better every year. One went 3-8 his first year, 8-4, 9-3. Highly ranked in our preseason football rankings. So I think the sky's the limit for him. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on Coach Ryan Smith. Coach, appreciate you joining Andy and me here on the Carolina Preps programming.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, I'll just throw it out here. I mean, it is the elephant in the room. We came out with our preseason power rankings on the first day of the practice, and lo and behold, your Sun Valley Spartans come out ranked number 5. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think I got you too high? Were you surprised? Were you good surprised, bad surprised? I get it. I get it from every angle from coaches. Sometimes coaches are ticked off at me that they're ranked, and sometimes they're ticked off that they're not. And a lot of times they tell me they're happy that they're not on, but yet then they go around to their team behind my back and say, that dadgum son of SOB or whatever.
Yeah. No, we try our best not to look at that stuff. We try to keep the noise inside our own locker room. The kids do a good job. I know the kids are probably more involved in it than we are as coaches, but of course, as coaches, naturally human-like, we take a peek at it every now and then. And, I think it's tough to say year in and year out. You never really know. I think the best saying is any given Friday. Anybody can beat anybody on any Friday. And, we're very fortunate with the group we got coming back, and we definitely appreciate the recognition and glad to be kind of where we are. Obviously, everybody wants to be number one, but until you get to that point, nobody can really claim number one until the last team's left standing in December.
Yeah. Andy, I'm going to let you jump in here too.
Yeah. So Ryan, I think one of the big things is your senior leadership, that you got coming back. Who can you talk about that's really impressed you from preseason? Coming off last season, you had a great season. It didn't end where you wanted it to end at, but coming into preseason and then even camp to up until camp now, who has been those who has spearheaded the leadership roles for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the kind of the nail on the head. You got to look at the seniors. This is the group I came in with. They were rising freshmen. The year that I got there, I was fortunate enough to come in with a really talented athletic group. And I think they kind of just take it all and run together with it. You can't really talk about leaders, of course, on football teams without talking about a quarterback. Noah Lineberry does a great job day in and day out. Kind of leading the offense and getting us set up and in the right spot. Very fortunate to have him behind center for us for his second year. Just does a really good job, in my opinion, of playing off script. We don't always put him in great spots, and part of that's my fault. But he does a really good job, making me look smart on plays where, I'm not very smart all the time, but I think he just does a really good job. Braden Hood up front, offensive line, a returning 2-year starter at center, has really done a good job of kind of taking those guys up there. We were very young up front last year. They've done a good job of really banding together and playing together and kind of playing for one another. Zach Cullen, Andrew Duty, Brandon Creech, Cole Eversole, Braylon Reynolds, Tanasi Papazis, the list goes on and on. It's just a bunch of guys that, if you see them walking kind of outside the locker room, like, man, that guy's not very athletic, but they just do a really good job day in and day out of coming in. And, I think my biggest thing with this group is they love to compete with one another. They love to trash talk one another. Hey, I'm better than you. You're better than this guy, whatever. But I just think they really enjoy playing football together. They enjoy the practice aspect of it. And, very rarely do you see one of them if you don't see 20 of them, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean to, I saw that today too, Ryan, when I was out there visiting and, just the competitive spirit, and I even heard you ever say, we got to keep building the momentum of building throughout each practice, not just each week, but each practice. And, and I really liked what I saw flying around out there. One other question, if you don't mind me, Chris.
Sure.
You were under, you played with, I was coaching when you played, and, Scott Stein. How much of an influence has Scott Stein been to you versus Andy Capone at Weddington when you were with him? How much influence does that have on you with those guys that are currently or previously doing it? Even Tim Carson.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to play for several really good coaches. Obviously, Coach Stein is, probably one of the most influential people I have in my life. He was very hard on me as a high school football player, but it was obviously very necessary. I wasn't the smartest person in the world as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, but, who is? But just the way he kind of shaped us and molded us. He married my wife and myself, just 2 years ago. So just seeing kind of the change he made in his life, from going from, throwing a pick on third down to something he thought he saw that versus what I saw, and kind of having, to sit there and take what he really had to say, compared to what he is now, and, still talk to him every now and then, try to pick his brain when I can. Because I think he has a football mind unlike really anybody I've ever been around. He's a special guy. Yeah. And then, of course, when I first got into coaching over at Weddington, being with Coach Capone, he's one of my best friends. I really kind of feel like he's a brother, between me and my older brother. Just being around him, kind of picking his brain, learning the game of football. And I still pick his brain week to week. What do you think about these guys? What do you see? What do you like? Being in the same conference is kind of tough because that game week can be a little bit dicey sometimes when we play those guys. But just been very fortunate. And Coach Carson as well, like you mentioned, he's one of the first people I talked to when I got the job. because I know when he left Sun Valley to go over to Weddington, he wasn't quite in the same situation I was in, but I know he had some things to figure out and get straight over there, and he did an unbelievable job of it to where they're at now. I think he really kind of set the tone over there, but just been really fortunate to have a bunch of good people around me. And, that not only goes to those guys, but the staff we've put together now. I love all of our assistant coaches. They do a good job day in and day out. And, when it comes down to it, everybody's looking, saying, okay, Ryan's the guy that makes everything work. But ultimately, it's our assistant coaches. They're with the guys every period, individual drills, inside, sevens, team, whatever it may be. They're the guys that make the car go. And, very fortunate to have a really good group of guys around me.
Hey, you made that comment that 17, 18-year-olds don't always make the best decisions. Well, hey, I'm living proof that almost 50-year-olds don't always either. But it's all good. Hey, I want to take maybe about a half a step back and kind of go back and talk to Coach Stein for a moment, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I had an opportunity to coach in a game against his team in 2001. We played a Thanksgiving weekend, day after Thanksgiving game when I was at South Rowan. He was East Mecklenburg. Tightly contested game, 20-15, and a little bit of a rainstorm. He had a great quarterback named Marshall Glenn that kind of proved to be the difference in that game. But he was certainly a tough coach to scheme against and go against. And that was in the pre-subdividing days. So, 4A football was really legit. We were both playing for a ticket to go play Independence and Chris Leak in the following weeks. But anyway, how's Coach Stein been doing? Because I had saw where he had maybe had some health concerns and just hadn't been doing the best. But how's he doing today?
As far as I know, he's recovering. I think that he's kind of on the road to recovery. And I actually just talked to him last week, and he's talking about coming by the school one day. So I'm really hoping I can get him out there. And, it's just tough when a guy you see like that in high school that's your head coach, you almost feel like he's invincible. Yeah. I think I tell people the story all the time. People probably get tired of hearing me say it. I was a freshman, and we were playing Anson County and Stephon Anthony and Brennan Ellerby and some of those guys. And luckily enough, I wasn't playing because that would have been a nightmare. I was actually behind Capone that year. And Stein comes in, and, we're down by 28-30 at halftime. And we had one of the lat pull-down machines in the weight room, and it had up to about, 800, 900 pounds on it. And I just remember vividly watching the guy punch it, and the thing rocked back and forth. I'm just like, okay, I'm not really sure what we're doing here, but I don't want to mess with that guy right now. But he is he's one of the best football minds that I'm lucky enough to know. He says stuff sometimes when he helps me break down film. I'm just like, how do you even see that?
Yes.
No, I don't understand. You've been out of the game for 15 plus years now, and it's just like you still have an eye for it. Whether it be offense, defense, special teams, he doesn't really specialize in anything. He specializes in everything. And it's like no matter what, he's going to see it. And it's like, okay, well, I feel kind of stupid now because I didn't see that, but I appreciate you pointing that out for me.
Yeah, no kidding. And, with my role and position here with Carolina Preps, I just want to promote the positive of teams. Unfortunately, some teams are just going to be bad. And sometimes teams are bad for a long time. But I really credit Coach Stein when he came to Sun Valley. I think it was 01 or 02. I think it was 02. It really turned that school and your program around because for the most part, by and large, Sun Valley was not a very good football program prior to the 2000s.
Not at all.
And he shifted that pretty quickly. And, not that you guys have achieved the championship caliber that you want to and that I feel you're working towards. But I think without his transition and moving and doing the things he did and some of the things you talked about when you played, I think Scott Stein probably would be one of the most influential men in Sun Valley football history.
Absolutely. You take him away from it, we're nowhere close to where we are right now. I think it was a losing mindset when he got there. And the thing I credit him the most for is, he was always big on, they may be better than us overall, but they're not going to be tougher than we are.
There you go.
We're going to play harder than they are. We're going to play to the last whistle, whether it's 70-0 or 10-7. We're going to play to the last whistle, and if you don't, you're going to have to deal with me. And I think that really kind of shifted the mindset. I was lucky enough to be around it because my brother was part of his first class there. And I credit my brother and his senior class that graduated in 2007 because they kind of took a stand like, okay, look, we're tired of losing. And while they weren't necessarily the most talented as freshman and sophomore year, they found a way to get some wins here and there and, beat a team or two they shouldn't have and really kind of got some more kids coming out and getting excited about football. And then, they made a run as junior and senior. His junior year, they actually had Tuscola come down in the playoffs. And they were physically overmatched. And I think that was kind of eye-opening for Coach Stein and Coach Carson. And they were like, look, we got to fix this. And
Yeah,
I tell our guys all the time, practice games, whatever, the weight room is the most important thing that we do.
Yeah, yes.
Everybody's doing it, but if you're not in here taking it seriously, then, we're just falling behind at that point. So a credit to Coach Stein and Coach Carson and all the staff he had together with him, and a credit to a lot of the classes that came before me that really kind of set my class of 2012 and, the classes on beyond that up for success.
And Andy, I want to loop you into this. And, I'm not trying to harp too much on the history, but I think it's relevant history. I'm looking here at the results between Sun Valley and A.L. Brown, and I'm not sure if he's on the staff or not, but for about 25 years, Sun Valley would lose to A.L. Brown. And I'm looking at some of the scores that Kannapolis would put up on Sun Valley: 48, 63, 56, 49, 56. I mean, they were typically pretty bad losses. And then in 2005, when, by the way, Kannapolis is still a pretty tough team with Ron Massey, they go up to Kannapolis and beat Sun Valley and beat Kannapolis in 05. And I thought that was or 06, I guess it is, a really key moment in history in that rivalry. Andy, were you a part of that game?
I was not, but I was there. I was newly married. We had just moved back to, Union County, and that's kind of where my first introduction to Scott Stein was. And, when I saw that, going back to him, I saw that and I was like, man, I want to be a part of that. And, Scott, as big burly as he is, he had a heart for young guys that wanted to get into coaching. And, I think he really molded me. Ryan said it best a minute ago. He was kind of that father figure that, you really look up to, not just on the football field and the coaching knowledge that he has, because he does have such a particular eye. But, a funny story about, A.L. Brown and Sun Valley. I was on the 96 football team at Sun Valley, and, Nick Maddox back then, ran 2 punts back before their offense even touched the field. So, I mean, so you're right in your history there, Chris, as far as, particularly bad. And, I was very fortunate. I'm a very big guy. And, I was blessed to, to have the size to play college football at Western Carolina University. But, all that goes back to say, the weight room works. And to kind of piggyback off what Ryan was saying a minute ago, everybody's doing it. It just depends on how well you want to be in the weight room and how much you love the weight room.
Yeah.
I want to asterisk put aside that last score up there in 2022 because they threw the ball forward twice on a double pass and they got away with it.
Oh wow! Are they talking about that 22 game?
Yeah, I want to put an asterisk beside that one. That one bothers me still.
Okay. Hey, I'm looking at it right here. Prior to that 2006 victory of Sun Valley, I counted them up from 81 until 05. Sun Valley only scored 12 touchdowns against Kannapolis. And then obviously you can look at those scores up there towards the top, how that rivalry really, even though Kannapolis still won those games following, you can see where that series got much tougher. And again, I just kind of want to credit a lot of that to Coach Stein and everything he did. But one thing, Coach Smith, I wanted to ask you, and I was looking at your schedule. You open up the season with 2 really big road games on the road on the 22nd at Lake Norman. I don't know if you've ever played a game there, but my suggestion to you is whatever time you think you need to leave to get there, I'd leave an hour earlier because traffic on 150 there, now that they're doing construction, is awful. I might, and this is going to sound crazy, and Andy might agree with me, I might even consider going all the way around 485, up 16 to Denver, the other side of the lake, and coming that way.
I 100% agree with that.
Trust me, traffic's going to be crazier than you could ever imagine. But anyway, I guess it's not hard, and I'm going to kind of take a peek at your schedule again, getting your young men and your team up for your schedule. On the road at Lake Norman, on the road at Mooresville. You come home for Parkwood, but then obviously sudden you got a trio of Monroe, at Weddington, Cuthbertson, at Catholic. You get Piedmont, Marvin Ridge, which I know Marvin Ridge is a little bit, younger than they've been, but I still think they're a really well-coached, good football team. I've saw them over the spring. And then on the road at Porter Ridge, and I might lump in that same equation with Marvin Ridge. You got a pretty tough football schedule, Coach.
Absolutely. So when we sat down and looked at the schedule this year, we were still kind of in between of the, seeing what the classification was going to be. We thought we had a chance to possibly be 5A and, ultimately landed in 6A, which is fine. It is what it is. I think that I really wanted to put our guys on the road early in playoff environments, and I think Lake Norman and Mooresville both can provide that. Obviously, they've been really good football teams, really well coached over the past few years, going back for a while now. Mooresville's a traditional school. Lake Norman, I actually got to know Coach Oliphant a little bit last year. They did a walkthrough for their Marvin Ridge game on our bye week at our school before they went over to Marvin Ridge. So he's a good guy, does things the right way. Look forward to competing against those guys. I know they'll be a tough, sound football team, coached very well. I know they got the sophomore quarterback that's going to be a stud. I know he's already piling up some offers in the state of North Carolina. Seen some film on him, and he's a really good football player. And then, going to Mooresville week 2, we actually scrimmaged them last year, and it's actually funny. My last high school football game was at Mooresville. We lost them in the playoffs the third round my senior year. But we went up there for a scrimmage last year, and we go out there with 85 kids, JV and varsity, which I feel really good about. And I turn around and look in the end zone, and they got about 300 kids standing there. I'm like, man, this must be nice. You got a bunch of guys, bunch of bodies. So 2 really good tests early, and then I think people sometimes discredit the Parkwood team we got week 3. They were very young last year. They had a really good freshman class, and they're just going to be another year bigger and stronger. And then we turn around and get the 3A, 2A state champions, or 5A now in week 4. So feel really good about our non-conference schedule. I think there's a bunch of good tests there, and I think that it can really shape us and get us ready for our conference schedule, which I think is, one of the best in the state.
Now, Ryan or Coach Smith, how much did the new RPI system really play into the way you scheduled, or did it? Because you were on those teams when we opened up with Richmond County, and then or Mallard Creek, and then Richmond County. So, that going back to what Coach Stein and what you just said is, we weren't scared to play anybody, but we'd play everybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, how much did any of that go into your thought process with the way the new rules are, with the way the seating processing and the RPI to schedule Lake Norman and Mooresville or people like that beforehand?
I think it does. I think you kind of in the moment, you're not really thinking as much about that as far as just getting a good quality opponent. I think my biggest thought with it was to get on the road to the playoff environment early, because we've stumbled a little bit in the past year, on the road and, games against quality opponents, just trying to find our way through. And, it's like I told, our principal and AD when they hired me, it's a 4-year process. In year 1, you're going to lose big to some teams. In year 2, you're going to lose close. In year 3, you're going to learn how to win a little bit. And year 4 is the time to go. So I think this group they're ready. They're ready to go compete and, put their best foot forward. So getting those guys early in the season, obviously is a benefit to us, because early in the year, anything can happen just like it can later in the year. But early in the year, the way we've been working the summer and the spring, I do feel like we're going to be in as good a shape, if not better shape, than anybody we play. And hope, honestly, those games come down in the fourth quarter. And just find a way to, push ourselves over the finish line. Really looking forward to getting out there, away from the county, away from the area around here, and, seeing some football away from here, and seeing some really well-coached teams, some well-disciplined teams, and getting to the point where, we're really going to test ourselves early and see where we're at.
All right. Hey, Coach Smith, do you have a little bit more time to hang out with us, or are you in a hurry to get out of here?
No, I'm good.
Hey, I'm going to take our first break. Again, I told you about our new partnership with the National Guard. I've got this commercial I want to run for them, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the 6A class. So stick with us, guys.
You'll still have common days. Forget someone's name mid-conversation. Count your tips at the end of your shift. Buy something disappointing off the internet. This is not one of those days. A few weeks a year and you'll discover the most uncommon time of your life.
All right, guys. Hey, check out our friends with the North Carolina Army National Guard. Appreciate them jumping on board again. I can't wait to really debut this new program we're going to be doing with them, and that should hopefully come out, if not tomorrow, later this week. And I'll just throw it out there, guys. I am in the process of trying to get some local team-based sponsors. They're really inexpensive, $100 here or maybe $200 to sponsor all the teams and for your conference standings. I've got a guy who's out here selling for us, just trying to help raise some money. Because trust me, Coach Smith, you probably don't realize it, but it costs me a lot of money to feed Andy when he and I go out on Friday night. So I need all the help I can get.
I can only imagine.
And Coach Zach Bevilacqua, he will start giving me a hard time. He sees me rolling with Andy, so I've got to up my game to be able to cover high school football if I'm going to let him ride with me. But anyway, that's just kind of me being funny. I do appreciate everyone that supports this initiative that I'm trying to do with high school football. But I did want to ask you, Coach, if you don't mind, and just indulge me in some questions. Who do you see up? And I got it saying East here. Disregard that. I got to edit that right quick. People are going to think I'm an amateur, which tonight I feel like it. I was telling Andy I just came back from some Mexican food, so my mind probably ain't right. There we go. Let's do it again. Who are some of the 6A West contenders that you've got your eyes on? Before you answer, I know that a lot of times coaches are going to say, I'm just worried about my team week to week, and I get it. And if you want to say that's a good answer. I get it. But if you do look at some of the teams that maybe letting your mind wander down at the end of the season, who are some of the guys you've got your eyes on?
Yeah, I know. I think it's going to go back to kind of the old way this year where they're not drawing the line for East and West to the end of the year after regular season. So that could shape it a little bit. But obviously, you got Dudley, Mount Tabor out there, AC Reynolds, Kings Mountain, Ashbrook's going to be loaded from what I understand. They got a lot of guys back. Charlotte Catholic is in our own conference. Just a bunch of really good teams right here in the 6A West, I feel like. Watauga is always a threat, with the stuff they do up there. I think the list is pretty not endless, but there's probably 8 to 10 teams in the West from what I've seen that can really pose a threat to, go play for the state championship for the West.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I'm going to do something I really never do. This is probably like my trade secret, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. What the heck? I mean, we're just out here promoting high school football. Well, let me do this. I want to share a screen. See if I can find it right here. I got like so much going on. Rankings, week 0. So I want to share my ranking thing for 6A since we're at it. And I'll just keep talking here to it. And there you can see 71st, Ashbrook, Mount Tabor, Northern Ash, Sun Valley, Rose, Terry Sanford, Scotland, Reynolds. And there you see below the top 10, Statesville, Kings Mountain, Northern Guilford, Watauga, Jacksonville, Dudley, Asheville, Middle Creek, Williams, Union Pines. Those are all extremely good football teams. I mean, phenomenal good football teams. And you can even get down as far as like into the 40s and find teams like Central Cabarrus, who I think is going to be a lot better. West Johnston, who won 6 games. Westover, who won 7 games. I think that just goes to show how strong football in the 6A class really is, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I see right there at number 45, I think, Glenn. You never know what they're going to come in and year out. That's a very athletic area and the Forsyth area that they could roll out with a juggernaut any year. And then TC Roberson right there at 32. We had them in first round of the playoffs last year. A very tough physical football team. If you don't see their offense every week, so it can be kind of a hassle. And then as you go up, Asheville played one of our conference opponents in Marvin Ridge in the playoffs last year. They looked very athletic on film when I saw it. Statesville, we got them on film against Alexander Central last year. Again, another really extremely athletic football team that plays with some physicality and some anger. So, I think it comes down to, who the ball bounces for. It truly does. I think that the West is loaded. Not that the East isn't, but, I don't know as much about those guys as I do the West. There's a bunch of really good football teams in the 6A West that I think it could be between 8 to 10 teams to see who goes on to represent the West in the state championship.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned Alexander Central. That's a team. Their JVs were phenomenal. They had, not the JVs always matter, but they had a very strong group. They have a lot of senior-led offensive linemen. They are so deep at the offensive and defensive line. They're bringing in a lineman and Coach Marshall. Do you know him, Andy?
I know. Yeah, I met him when I met him and with Matt Wilson, the head coach at Newton Conover, and and all them guys up at the February clinic.
Yeah, and I kind of lump Coach Chris Marshall in. He came up as a Tom Harper. If a lot of guys know Tom Harper and Chris Deal, who spent a long time at Freedom and Alexander Central and did great things. He kind of came up under that tutelage, went off and played offensive line in college. That's a team, a lot of people have asked me for an under-the-radar 6A team that I think could go in and make a really deep run in the playoffs. That's the kind of team, because Coach Smith, I'm sure and you mentioned sometimes the way the ball bounces. You can have these prolific passing teams and look really good this time of year when the weather's perfect. But when it gets October, November, December, and we've seen this at Weddington with Coach Andy Rodden's team, Andy Capone's teams. Sorry, Andy. Coach Capone, you've got to be able to run that football and dominate the line of scrimmage. And I think when you look at his team and you got a team like that can rattle you up in the middle, shake the trenches up, I think that's a success, recipe for success.
100%. So we actually played at Alexander Central the past 2 years, and they beat us on JV last year. We won the varsity game, and then the year before we won both. But it's just big guys moving people around. They're going to control the clock. If you can't get them off the field, you're going to be in trouble. I felt good. Last year we were really close to not having a JV team. We had 17 kids on JV, and they're both playing. They're all playing both ways the entire night. Actually finished 6-4 on JV, which was a huge shock to me. But just a credit to those guys. Like I said, going back to Coach Stein days, instilling toughness and people, being in shape, not coming off the field, and finding a way to see who really wants to win. But yeah, Alexander Central, I know Coach Carter retired, did a great job up there. I had the pleasure of getting to know him the past 2 years. But again, another weird offense that, not everybody sees every week to week in this day and age. And it's like you said, come October, November, December, you got to run the ball and stop the run, because if you can't do that, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. Andy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think he's dead on. Especially and you see things now, and I'm seeing it more because I travel more, maybe not as much as Chris, I'm sure you see it too, but football's starting to be cyclical. It's starting to go back, and what I mean by that is, the tight sets, the heavy sets, the running the football, we're not spreading it out and doing all these things now. Now, there are times, look at Catholic. They're Charlotte Catholic spreading it out a little bit now instead of just being in a tight box, 10 people in a box. So, I think it works for different scenarios depending on where you're at. But, when you get late fall, those late season games, Ryan's hitting the nail. Coach Smith's hitting the nail on the head with, the toughness, running the football, and when I was coaching, and not that it mattered. We wanted to average, 7 points a quarter. So if we had 28 points a game, we're going to be in most games. If you control the clock, and how do you control the clock? You run the football. So, that's the beauty about what Ryan's doing at Sun Valley, is he's bringing that toughness of where he's been, from a player to the coaches that he's been with to even the programs that he's been around. And I think that's kudos to Coach Smith for what he's done at Sun Valley and the short amount of time that he's done it. I'm super, and I don't know if I've ever said this publicly to him, but I'm super proud of him. Seeing him from the day, running stadium steps to the old stadium at Sun Valley to becoming a young man and going on to play baseball in college and then coming back and, coaching football. And, it's special to see those guys that you were around for 4 years, in the locker room that you went to battle with every single day, and be successful like he has been.
Wow. That's big words, Coach Smith.
No, he's definitely appreciate that, Coach. Everything takes shape in your life. You take kind of what you learn as a high school kid to a college kid to being a young and dumb coach. Just trying to find your way on the sidelines and being under a great head coach and Coach Capone, and learning more about the other side of the ball. Always been an offense guy, learning from Coach Hall over at Weddington, and some of the other defensive guys over there. And I'd be crazy not to mention Coach Martini, who's kind of like a mentor over there. Coach at Sun Valley, he's coached pretty much everywhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
just kind of learning the ropes and seeing kind of how everybody's mind thinks, and then obviously talking to our staff now. I'm lucky enough to have a really good offensive staff with I had a guy coaching receivers, played at Duke, Coach Coy Chambers, played at Monroe High School. Coach Grice is with us now. He's been a lot of different places, brings a lot of really good offensive ideas to us. We got a couple new guys, Coach Ricardo Jimenez coming to us from Georgia to coach the offensive line, Coach Linebear, who's actually Noah's dad, and his twin brother Wyatt plays receiver. The coaching quarterbacks for us, and then defensively, Coach Crooks that came with me from Weddington to be the DC here, and Coach Tim Collins, the defensive line, and Coach Byer, the linebackers, and then we actually added Coach Keaton from Reagan High School, who's coaching DBs and doing our special team stuff. Just really fortunate to have a bunch of really good guys around me, and day in and day out. If I'm not the first, usually I got to fight to be the first person to yell at something if I don't see it go right, because they're beating me to the punch.
Wow. Hey, cool. Hey, I hope I can keep you just a couple more minutes. Hey, guys,
Absolutely.
I know I'm looking at the stats. I got a few people watching on Facebook. We've got some people on YouTube. Do me a favor if you can. Share the show, like, subscribe to our channel. I'm trying to do everything we can to grow Carolina Preps even bigger, because just, again, my mission of Carolina Preps is to promote the state, the schools, the coaches, the student athletes, everybody that competes within the communities that make up this state. Because, one of the things we always do is promote coaches, because, it's coaches like you, Coach Smith, that will help shape and mold and grow tomorrow's coaches, tomorrow's husbands, fathers, leaders, supervisors, people in our community. And that's why high school football is so big to me. And, it kind of brings it full circle listening to you tell stories about Coach Stein and Coach Rodden, but keeping it on the coaching thing. And I know this show's far and away mostly about Sun Valley, but I wanted to pick your brain about some of the other coaches in your county, in your community, people that you coach with. Maybe the first one I'll ask you about is Coach Johnny Sal at Monroe. Tell me what it is, and I've known him for a long time, considering him a friend, watched his program. Sometimes I'm hesitant to say that, I don't always like it when a school's named after a community person, for whatever the reason may be. I'd rather see it named after a community, a town, a community, whether Monroe or whatever. But if there was to ever change the name of Monroe High School, I think Johnny Sal High School would be the most appropriate name forever, because I think that man means more to that school in every capacity, whether it's an administrator or a coach of just about every sport there is. I mean, what is it that makes Coach Sal special in your mind and maybe tough to scheme against?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, Coach Sal, those kids are like literally his own kids, and he's going to treat them like that. He's going to care for them like that. And at the end of the day, when he asks them to go do something, they're going to do it trying to run through a brick wall for him. And that's you can't teach those things. He has those relationships with those kids. He just does a really good job, not only from a football X's and O's standpoint, but just developing young men, putting them out in the community, just having that connection with them where he's going to get everything he's got out of them, and they're going to play hard for him no matter what. And I think that's a big part of the high school football game is if they're going to play hard for you, number one, they got to want to play for you. But number two, if they're going to play hard for you, that's special. And I think that, whatever sport he's coaching, whether it be football, basketball, I'm pretty sure he coaches track as well. Yep. I think that he just does a really good job of building relationships with players and kids. And beyond the athletic contest of it, though, just in their personal lives and their academic lives, whatever it may be, I think he just does a really good job of, giving them kind of an outlet to go to when they need it and, putting the best kids on the field. And, there's never really a drop-off when they make a sub in football. It seems to be the next guy is just as good. And I think that he's meant a lot to that community for a long, long time now. And I think you're 100% right. If they were going to rename a school, I think he's definitely earned the right to be that guy.
Absolutely. John, Andy, you got any Johnny Sal stories?
I'll tell you this. I mean, Johnny is one of those guys that, he's a teacher. He's a leader of men. And, no matter where you go, people really, draw to Johnny. The funniest story about Johnny to me it's not even about football. We always do an oyster roast on New Year's Eve, and we bought too many oysters, and so I was calling around and called a couple people. No, I don't need oysters. I called Johnny, and he's like, yeah, man, bring them over. And so I took him over to Johnny, and he had his coaching staff there, and I just hung out with them, for about an hour or so, and just seeing them out of their element,
Yes.
is one of those things. And seeing Coach Smith out of his element, or Coach Capone, or Coach Carter over at Marvin Ridge, or even Coach Hertz at Porter Ridge, or whatever it may be, like you get them away from football, and you just realize these men, such as Coach Smith, they truly care about their program. They truly care about their team. They truly care, and they talk about them. It's not just a front. You see a lot of people that sometimes it's just, I'm going to talk about my program in front of you. But you get people like Coach Smith that he talks about his kids even, away from Sun Valley, away from the football field, and that's coming, and that's kudos to Coach Smith and Coach Sal. And, I think, Union County has some great coaches. I really do.
I agree.
I just, going back to that pay thing, I'm just hoping we can, the state of North Carolina will get that right, because, somebody like Coach Smith, I think deserves, or even Coach Capone. I mean, you look at them, I mean, they deserve more money in Union County.
No question. By the way, if you guys got a comment, if you're watching, hey, leave me a message on Facebook or YouTube, just so I can see what you guys are thinking about the show. You can leave a comment, and I'll put you up on the screen so everybody knows you're watching. You mentioned Coach Capone, Coach Smith. You know him fairly well. The young man, and I say young, he's got a 90-9 record. Not hard to do the math on the winning percentage right there. 3 state championships. The only year he didn't win 12-plus games was COVID, and he won 7-1. So, I mean, it's still one heck of a year. What is it that makes him so special in your mind?
I think that exactly what you just said. I was actually there for the COVID year. We went 7-1, and seeing him after the loss at Mount Tabor, just the way he went back to work, I think that's what makes him so special. He's not going to settle for anything less than what he thinks is the standard. And I think he does a good job getting that across to his kids. And, they play a really tough physical brand of football. Obviously, they have some really good players, but I'm not sure that it's always been that way. I was fortunate enough to be around a couple really good players when I was there. Obviously, we had Will Shipley, who's playing for the Eagles now, just won a Super Bowl. But they do a good job of getting everything out of every person in that program, whether it be a role guy, whether it be a special teams guy, whether it be one of their, 5-star defensive linemen. We got to deal with that headache now. They do a great job of getting the best out of every single person in that program. And he has his coaches on board, players on board. And he's kind of the guy that I learned a lot from. And, I talked to him a good bit. And ultimately, we talk about all the time, we can put great players out in the community, but if we're not making better, in 10 years, better fathers, husbands, brothers, whatever it may be, then we're not truly doing our job. And I think he truly embraces that. And, I know his kids know he cares about them. And, that goes a long way in the high school football game.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Now, Coach Smith, I do have a question, kind of piggyback on that. You were talking about Coach Capone. During that week of rivalry, how often do you talk to your brother, who is, he coaches at Weddington? So how often do you talk to your brother during that week, or do you not talk to him and you wait till Friday night after the game? I mean, I've always wondered that.
It's gotten better in the last couple of years. Just trying to find a way. It's a friendly rivalry. They know we don't like them. We know they don't like us. At the end of the day, it's a true old school rivalry. I feel like, it's going to be a tough physical game. Yeah, it's cool to talk before and after the game, but at the end of the day, there would be nothing better than us breaking that streak and then beating us for, 11, 12 plus years now, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, if we're not doing our best to get our kids ready to beat them, they're not doing their best to get their kids ready to beat us, then again, we're not doing our job. I do think that it's, that rivalry's kind of gotten a little bit more, personal for us, not that it's turns into bad blood or anything, but nobody ever wants to lose, and it becomes a little bit more intense that week, honestly.
Yeah, I bet it's hard on Miss Teresa and and Scooter, though.
It can be tough. It can definitely be tough. Well, like I said, we're always doing our best to make sure that our kids are prepared, because if we're not doing our job to get our kids prepared, we're going into it, expecting to win. And that I wouldn't expect anything less out of our guys, and I know he wouldn't expect anything less out of his guys either.
Right.
That's right.
I promise you, I'm about to wrap you up. So
no, you're good.
Go. Please.
No, you're fun.
I know you respect every coach, and this ain't in no way trying to like create bulletin board that you respect some more than others. I mean, I understand the bond that coaches have. Obviously, I was in that fraternity for a long time, and still to this degree in this kind of way, I still am. But is there just a coach that you play on a yearly basis, or someone that you've played, or when you see his team on your schedule, you just kind of shake your head and be like, dadgummit, I mean, what a headache it might be to prepare for someone. Who would that person maybe be?
To be honest, I think that's really everybody in our conference, and I can go through them. We open this year, obviously, with Weddington. We know what that's going to be. It's going to be a tough physical game. They're going to play defense. They're going to run the ball. He's going to have 4 to 6 trick plays because he does nothing else in his free time other than just sit there and draw stuff up on the board. I know the guy, and, he's probably drawing up a trick play for us right now. And then we get Cuthbertson the next week. Coach Duke Howell, I think that they were one of the teams last year that everybody's kind of like, man, those guys kind of overachieved. And to be honest, I don't know that they did. I think that they were spot on what they were supposed to be. They were very good defensively. He always gets them ready to play. They play hard. They play for him. And I think defensively the past couple of years, they've been one of the better defenses we've played. They had the couple of defensive linemen, the Cole Websters, at James Madison now. He's an absolute nightmare to prepare for. I'm thankful that he's gone this year. And then you move on down the road. Haven't played Catholic yet, but I know that I always forget the guy's name. He used to be UNC Charlotte. I can never remember his name.
I brought Coach Emery?
Keith Emery, yes, sir. Keith Emery. I know that he's got those guys kind of buying back into the Catholic standard. And, I thought they had a good year last year. Again, we know what that's going to be. It's going to be a tough physical game. If you don't stop the run, you're in trouble against those guys, but they can also spread it out. Now, seems like they always got a 6'6", 6'7", 240-pound tight end that runs a 4.5.
They got a quarterback that looked the same. I was at a 7-on-7 a few weeks ago, and they 7-on-7 the way they play Friday night football, and they look the part. They look like they could get out there and run inside against you and just dominate you.
Yeah. So, and then defensively, I don't know that there's actually anything kind of like special scheme that goes into it, but they do their job and they know where they're supposed to be. And that makes it really tough to prepare for. You go down, I think our next game on the schedule is Piedmont. Coach Diller's doing a great job over there. They're always huge for whatever reason. They always go about 6'5", 260 across the board up front. So that's never fun to prepare for when you get that kind of average size across, the board up front. And, I think he's making some good strides over there. Marvin Ridge, Coach Carter. I know Coach Leggett, the offensive line, coached pretty well. They're always extremely well coached, and they're going to do exactly what they need to do to stay in games and give themselves a chance to win. And then across the street at Porter Ridge, a huge rivalry once again. Porter Ridge split from us when I was in middle school. Again, another one of those games where we don't like them and they don't like us, and it's always a tough physical game to where, again, getting late in the year, I think we got a November game with them this year. If the schedule, if I remember correctly, you don't run the ball and stop the run, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, no doubt. One final question for me, and I'll let Andy wrap it up. But, I talked at the beginning of the show, coming out preseason ranked 5th in the 6A. Whether you're 5th or whether you're 3rd or whether you're 12th, needless to say, the 6A is really solid. A lot of really good football teams. For you guys to kind of live up to that prophecy that I bestowed on you and to kind of live through the hype and to weather the storm of a season that we all know is going to have twists and turns and injuries and everything that comes with a regular high school football season. What's it going to take for you guys to still be playing football around Thanksgiving and maybe after?
Number one, I think staying healthy. I think that's everybody's goal, whether you get through the scrimmages, get through non-conference, staying healthy. But, I would say our next biggest thing is having our next guy ready, because ultimately, like you said, somebody's going to get hurt at some point. We're going to have the ups and downs, weathering the storm, finding a way to fight through adversity, because we're going to have adversity, whether it be in our conference, non-conference, with a really good, all-around schedule. And then finding a way to win a game or two here in the fourth quarter to where we got to really be at our best, put a drive together, get a stop, make a big play on special teams, whatever it may be. We got to try to find a way to stay healthy and get some production from guys that, that not everybody necessarily expects to give production to us this year.
All right. Andy, final thoughts.
So just wrapping this up, Coach Smith, and first of all, thank you for coming on with us, with Chris and I, and, and I greatly appreciate it. And I just want you to kind of talk about, what do you want the fans of Sun Valley High School, the students at Sun Valley High School, what do you want them to see from your team, your program? Is there any big events, any big games that you want to see them come out more, whether it's be on the road, whether it be at home? Because you and I both know we played in some crazy environments and coached in some crazy environments, and even Coach Hughes, Chris, has done the same. And, it's so much more fun when those environments are that playoff atmosphere. So it's a two-part question. What do you want your fans to see, the students of Sun Valley High School? And then to wrap it all up, any big time players, or that you think could be big time players for you guys, that would make the biggest difference when you get to that later part of the season, just to kind of bring it full circle and get, talking about your kids and what can they expect from you even?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I want our student body, our admin, parents understand to see is our kids are going to play hard. That's one complaint I've never had about these guys is, they're not going to back down from anybody, and they're not going to be scared of anybody. They're going to play hard until the last whistle blows. That's something I'm extremely thankful for, very appreciative of, and they do a really good job day in and day out of, we may have a bad day of practice, but I know at the end of the day on Friday nights, they're going to show up and they're going to play. They're going to play extremely hard. And that's something I feel like you can't coach. They either got it or they don't. And this group definitely has it as far as playing hard and, trying to make sure that they do everything they can to find a way to win. As far as big games go, I think every game's a big game. Us being in a 6A, 7A split conference, I know we kind of have Piedmont and Charlotte Catholic circled on our schedule. Not to discredit any of the other teams we play, because it's an extremely tough conference. Week in and week out, it's going to be a dogfight. But just trying to find a way to make sure we stay the course, we stay within ourselves, keep everything within our own locker room. The outside noise is going to be the outside noise. Just trying to find a way to channel that energy and make sure at the end of the day, I always tell our kids, I don't really care who we're playing, because it's about us. When it comes down to it, it's about us. We play our game. We play, we do what we need to do. We prepare right. We go out there and do what I expect us to do. There's nobody that I'm really afraid to go play. Not saying we're going to be successful every time. Nobody's going to go undefeated until the end of time. It's not possible. But there's not a game that I'm scared to go play, because this group gets it. They're going to play. They're going to play their hearts out. They're going to play for our school. They're going to play for each other. And luckily enough, for whatever reason, they want to play for me. Just going out there and being around those guys day in and day out, I'm very fortunate to have a really good group of seniors. I think it could be a number of 20 to 25 guys that make a difference for us, to answer kind of the last part of your question.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me feel really good about going in this year is, it could be a different guy every week, and I'd be okay with that. Just trying to find a way to, get through, stay healthy, and find ways to stay on the left side of the column in the win-loss column.
There you go. Coach Ron Smith, Sun Valley High School, I appreciate you spending the past 45, 55 minutes with us tonight. It's been great, some good football conversation. Wish your team the best of luck. I know that injuries and, momentum and tough losses are always a thing in the football season, but I mentioned weathering the storm. I wish you guys the best of luck when it comes to it, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on your program and following you throughout the year. And hopefully maybe here in a few weeks or once the season gets going, I'd love to get an opportunity to get you back on here and bring a few of your players as well and kind of let them tell their story of how the season's going.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. For Coach Smith, Coach Andy Rodden, I'm Chris Hughes, Carolina Preps Inside the Headset. This is it for a Monday night. Guys, if y'all want to hang on after the music, I'll say bye to y'all, but I appreciate it. And everybody, we'll do it again tomorrow night. All right, guys? All right.
You'll still have common days. But this is not one of them. A few weeks a year and you'll discover the most uncommon time of your life.
From the Highlands to the coast, we'll bring you the rivalries, the traditions, the legendary coaches, and tomorrow's superstars forging their path to greatness. You're watching CarolinaPreps.com.
Get off up, Lonnie. Get off up. Hold it.